I think that should give us courage.
Exposure to other people's perspectives.
It's moving us in a good direction.
John, the man, the myth, the legend, is America being saved?
I think to the extent it can be saved, it's moving in a direction I like. That's the best way I can answer it. Not perfectly, not all along every dimension, but along enough of them that on net we're saving-ish. There's save-ish stuff happening. I like it. I'm happy.
What is happening that you like, and what is happening that you dislike?
Well, I've gone through a personal transformation in a lot of ways. I think a lot of us have on the, let's say, center right, which is we thought we lived in a certain kind of rule of law order that sort of worked. It had problems. We could disagree about this or that, but that there was a couple foundational assumptions that seemed to still mostly kind of operate. At the center of it for me being America's unique standing as it pertains to freedom of speech and expression. Oh, sure, the college campuses are crazy. Peter Boghossian's getting kicked out by lunatics, but on the whole, America's pretty good here. And then the past 5 years have revealed to those of us that see it this way that, oh, no, it's not going all that great. The institutions have taken on they are of a different kind. This is not qualitative. It's shifted to category shift in what constitutes what's going on in America with our institutions, specifically the administrative state, the intelligence bureaucracy, all the people that were telling us that we need to sit down and shut up, that we're trying to install like a disinformation board inside the military.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Why do you consider these things center right?
Well, they didn't used to be, right? If anything, it used to be, you go back to like the 90s, the halcyon day of the 90s, and Tipper Gore is sort of out of step with the rest of the left and being censorious, and you've got whatever you could say, like focus on the family, wanting to censor porn and video games, or whatever.
Or rap lyrics she wanted to censor.
And I think that it's pretty clear now that even if it's temporary, even if it's a product of being in reaction to the woke left, that broadly speaking, the right of center and those who are have become like part of the coalition. Like Trump's administration is almost like the embodiment of this new shaggy order where Tulsi Gabbard's nomination yesterday, or her induction into her role, is like the completion of a transformation. The fact that not a single Democrat would vote for Tulsi Gabbard, whose position fundamentally is we should have the intelligence agencies respect the civil rights of the American public and not try to get us into wars that are of no use to us and murder lots of people. That not a single Democrat could break rank to be like, wait a second, like, isn't this what aren't we for the things Tulsi is saying? That is this complete realignment that's happened. And so
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
No, so that to me, when you say like, is America being saved and what's happening, I look at the total picture and I say it's being saved more than it would have been had things gone the other way by a large margin.
Oh, it would have been unprecedented. But I do, and I don't mean to be persnickety or that just the term center right seems turgid to me. It just seems bloated. It's not, I don't know. Okay, so what is Trump doing that you like or don't like specifically?
Sure. I think that there's a lot I like. There's things I don't like. I'm a free trader, so I don't like tariffs. I think beyond the
That's probably bluster though. Probably bluster. Like he says it to Mexico, they send troops to the border. So it's probably just a negotiating tactic.
Yeah, I do think he fundamentally sees trade as a zero-sum game to some extent and understands the country as if it's kind of like one big company, and that's not the right way to think about governance. So there are, and you could go back to him showing up on Oprah in the 90s or Larry King in the 80s, and he's been consistent on this. Oh, the Japanese are ripping us off. They're sending these Toyotas. They're ripping us off.
Yeah, they just invested us. Yeah, they just invested in well, who knows if it will come through, but they claim that they're going to commit to invest in the United States economy. So already that was the I mean, it seems that even the threats that he's making, I mean, the whole idea that we would take Gaza, that place is a fucking shithole. Who wants that place? Like the idea the idea that we'd take Gaza is totally insane. But all he'd have to do, he just has to say that we want Gaza, and everyone's like, oh, and Netanyahu's right there, and he's like, but I just think that those things are bluster. They're negotiating tactics. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, what do I know about it? But
I agree with that. But I don't know, right? I don't. I have to take what's said on face value to some extent, and so there's parts of that I can quibble with. But I think that the nominees I broadly really like. Even RFK, who I disagree with on a bunch of things, or in the past, I'm pretty pumped about on average. I feel like directionally, what he's talking about are and should be the priorities for health in the country.
Interesting. And Dawkins just put out a tweet where he lambasted that. A lot of people are super upset about that. But yeah, so that's the other thing. This fast food nation. I don't way outside my expertise, but there's a sugar crisis in this country. That's clear as day. There's an obesity crisis in this country. That's clear as day. So our healthcare system, people have been trying to reform that since, I mean, I'm 58, as long as I can remember. And then the Obama administration, that was one of the, so I don't know, maybe I may have fundamental disagreements with RFK, but I don't know. It just seems like we need to have, and I just remember in the beginning of the pandemic, they weren't talking about comorbidities of obesity and COVID. They weren't talking about so it was a kind of sensitivity and feelings over facts and evidence. But anyway, nobody trusts the experts anyway. Now that's another question. That's another problem that we have. How do we which gets back to what you said, how do we bring trust back to our institutions? I think I have an answer to that question, but bracketing that for a moment, RFK's nomination, I mean, all of his nominees were fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think that it is the most ideologically diverse executive branch we've maybe ever had, fundamentally.
Are there any African Americans in the cabinet? Reed, could you look that up? I don't think there are.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not sensitive to that. I don't.
No, I'm not sensitive to it at all. But you would think that the people would be screaming up and down. But then again, when Clarence Thomas was nominated, the same people, the same usual suspects, they don't really want diversity. They just want people who have the same opinions, who look different, or who are darker skinned. So I just, for years and years, over a decade, I'm saying you just cannot take these people seriously. Like Oprah Winfrey, I was just telling Reed the other day, Oprah Winfrey wants $1 million, or got $1 million to speak at a Harris rally. Are you absolutely kidding me? Oh, someone said yes, the HUD guy is black. I don't know, but so you think that this guy is a Nazi, and yet so you think he's a Nazi, and yet you want $1 million? Where are all the people marching in the streets? I think Schellenberger made that point as well. Where are all the people marching? You think if this guy's an actual Nazi, you would be totally enraged and completely up in arms.
I mean,
there's his Reed. Pull it up. Hold on one second, John. So there's his cabinet. Let's see. Up. Yep, HUD. That's right. Good on you there, Doherty. Yeah. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, look, I think the thing that's been interesting is that Elon's role in the administration with with Doge
love it.
It's if you call yourself in any way a libertarian and you are not excited about this, then you have succumbed to some kind of brain virus that is maybe a woke mutation that because I see this among people who I've known for a long time who are like cosmopolitan Georgetown types who are like, oh, this is an affront to the rule of law. It's like, what are you talking about? Most of these agencies you could argue are unconstitutional in their very nature. I mean, yeah, this footage, this experience,
it's awesome, phenomenal.
It's so good. It's so good. I don't care. I love it. I love every second.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic. And for those who are listening, we're looking at, and I love his little kid, was his name X on his shoulders. I think that's the other good thing. I think it's good to normalize kids in the workplace. And
my wife and I were talking about this. You know,
I think that's like, really important. Why shouldn't they be in those environments? That's how they learn. I think it's extremely important. But so it's really interesting. The left. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say he's taken an experience we've all had over the past 5 years, which is getting video bombed on a Zoom call with work by your kids, and taking it to the highest level imaginable, which I just think is
I mean,
awesome.
I think this is great. It normalizes it. So Bernie Sanders got attacked by people on the left for saying, yes, the Pentagon does need an audit. I was tweeting about that a while ago, or posting about on X, whatever the vernacular is. It's amazing to me. So here's the problem. I was thinking about this in the shower today. So here's the problem. All the people who in there, it truly is in one ideological vein, and it's on the left, and it's about certain issues, identitarian issues. You know, I just had someone reach out to Aaron today, who's a apologist. Aaron's works for us. He's an apologist. He wants me to have on our show to talk about it. I'm kind of sick of talking about that. I've been talking about that for years, but these people will talk to you in a heartbeat, like no problem. They love talking to you. But it's really interesting when you don't speak to anybody. You don't have to either develop the moral infrastructure to answer an argument or do the intellectual work to figure it out. And so the consequence of that is nobody will engage. These people will not engage you about why Doge is bad. Like I was reading an article in The Guardian the other day, which is just the most conspicuously ideological, anti-evidence, partisan hack, garbage, shit.
Tell me how you really feel, Peter.
Well, I really feel I think I'm in Reed's late grandma's house. I'm going to substitute all the toilet paper for Guardian articles. But it's just so interesting to me. These people, they just don't see it. They've gotten themselves into a kind of rut. And the rut is because they've spent so long not talking to people, like literally making it a virtue of being in an echo chamber and not talking to people about it. They have now dulled the blade. They have now lost the ability. And so I was also thinking, so it's not that they would argue. So I don't even know what they would argue. I'm guessing what they would argue because they won't talk to you. But my guess is they would say, well, I'm not against government waste. I'm against cutting these programs that do some kind of demonstrable good, you know, like condoms for Gaza or whatever, condoms or shoes for Ethiopians or, you know, encouraging them to wear shoes or the behavior of, you know, cocaine. I mean, whatever it is, I was reading about it, Musk tweeted about this morning. If you do not engage ideas long enough, and if you do not engage ideas with a dialectic, with something, then you just become, you increase your confidence in what you believe, and ultimately you become stupid because you become less capable of doing that. And that's what the entire university system has created. They've created, either willfully or through a kind of concerted ignorance, they've created a generation of people now who literally are stupider. You're stupider as a result because you can't engage these ideas.
It's we obviously agree on this with 100% overlap. I mean, you know, you want your philosophy to be anti-fragile, and the only way you do it is try to break it at every turn, and that is what it should mean to be a thoughtful person. You know, right. This is, and I think that what we have is, honestly, you know, the term that's gotten thrown around like crazy is vibe shift. And it's like the latest thing to be cringe. It might already be cringe, I think, based on like the Gen Z cringe clock.
I think cringe is cringe. But
cringe
yeah,
is cringe. But I'm a dad. I do, my show's Dad Saves America, so I get to be cringe all the time. I think that one element of this, and there, you need a limiting principle to this posture, is now they're suddenly angry about institutional norms. This has been this cudgel used, but not when the Biden administration was trying to install a censorship board inside the military.
right. These people.
But think about that for a second. Let's just linger on the misinformation board. This was perhaps the most shockingly authoritarian attempt. The fact that it failed is good. You could say, oh, that's the system working. That it was even attempted suggests such a profound disdain for the cornerstone of like Americanism that we can never forget that was tried, and that in the run up to the election day, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John Kerry, Keir Starmer, the Five Eyes, all of these people were saying, we need more of that. We need global institutionalized censorship as an industrial complex that should be the new normal. America and our constitutional norm of free speech and First Amendment rights must give way to European Commission technocratic control, where we're throwing people in jail for Facebook posts.
Right. And by definition, we will, well, not by definition, but we will forget. It is inevitable. Look what happened in the last 10 years. We don't understand. Like, it's, and the fact that these people just continue to dig down and make themselves irrelevant, so here's one of my problem with that is we actually need a viable, at least two-party system. And we don't have one right now. We have a bunch of crazy people who are the whole pronoun thing. These people are, it's not even the culture war thing. If somebody is doing something that is good for the country and you don't happen to like the rest of their policies, you need to say, you know what, this is good for the country. I'm glad these guys are doing it. We should have done it. How do we make our side better? But we don't. Our democracy can only exist and thrive if we have a viable minimum two-party system, which we do not have.
We don't. No, I don't think the Democratic Party as it is constituted remains viable. I don't think it has an argument to continue to exist. It needs to go to the way of the Whigs. The problem that they have is, I don't know, the center. The center is actually like in the Trump administration, basically. You've got
it's crazy.
People,
totally.
They would be like a Tulsi RFK new liberal order that truly has like re-embraced being concerned with the excesses of power, that is rational and reasonable. Even if you think at any given moment, oh, RFK unvax, he's unreasonable, fine. But that's basically all inside of this, the Trump world now. And the adjacencies. Like, I watched the election with on election night with my dear friend John Mackey, the former CEO and co-founder of Whole Foods Market. And like the parents that we met when my son was going to the Waldorf school. This would have been the left. And instead, and I won't speak for anyone but myself here, but we were all broadly happy with the outcome to varying degrees, but all broadly happy, like this, thank God. And I don't think we can forget either that it's like, it says a lot that this wasn't actually a blowout. Who voted for this? Like, who was in this middle that was like, oh yeah, we should have this person who has no ideas and can't string a sentence together and just violated the only job of the vice presidency, like right in front of us. Like, we had a commander-in-chief who it was not capable of doing the job. The singular purpose of the vice president is to step in there and say that this is a problem. This is a problem. This is the constitutional crisis happened a year ago or more, where Joe Biden's cognitive capabilities collapsed. His entire inner circle knew
the relentless lying. Joe Scarborough, all these people. I mean, the lying. So I just want to say one thing, and then I want to look at a comment. And I watched a video by Douglas Murray today, which was great. Musk tweeted it out. I think that the right needs to make some overtures to the non-crazy left, or maybe even to the not completely crazy left.
So, do you think that's not happening?
No, let me tell you specifically what I'm thinking about.
Okay.
I would find these people have been screaming, and I agree with them. I agree with the people. These people have been screaming for years that we need to audit the military. They've been freaking out up and down that we need. Now they want to audit the military, and everybody's freaking out that we shouldn't audit them. I would find reasonable people on the left, and there were a few left, and I would put them on committees. I would ask them to volunteer so it wouldn't cost any money and say, listen, your country needs you. You've been screaming about this for fucking years. We would want you on this committee, and we're going to give you some oversight authority, and you audit the Pentagon. I think that would make our country stronger. I think we need to do those kinds of things. I think Yank Unger is I agree with nothing he says. I cannot stand the man. However, if I were in a position of authority, I would put him in some kind of charge of auditing the Pentagon. That's exactly the kind of people we need.
Yeah, Joe was sharp as a tack. Yeah, indeed he was.
All right, I'll get off. I'll get off of that. So Reed has a comment highlighted here. Reed, you have to blow that up. Educating kids in a left-wing echo chamber has destroyed American education. Yes. We're making people more stupid intentionally by paying a fortune for it. A disaster for our future. Okay, so Reed is going to play a Douglas Murray clip. This is a fantastic clip. David Deutsch commented on it. This is a great clip. I've been screaming about this for years. Nobody listens. Here it is.
I'm Douglas Murray. This is Direct Address. A poll out this week found that just 41% of young British people felt proud to be British. Just 41% of people in the 18 to 27 age bracket. This has caused quite a lot of comment and some concern, not least because 20 years ago, when the same question was asked, the results were very different. In 2004, when young Britons were asked whether...
Okay, so I don't know if you've seen this, but...
I've written about something similar in the US.
It's wonderful. Yeah, basically he talks about the video. It's well worth watching the whole video through. Basically, he talks about the fact that this is the result of our educational system. Again, I've been screaming about this for a decade. Nobody listens. Nobody cares. I'm a Nazi. Okay. Well, now you're going to reap what you sow. You will reap what you sow.
I wrote a piece for Fox about immigration, and one of the things I was pointing out was Axios did a similar poll, and there's several like this for the U.S., and 18 to 34-year-olds, 35% said they were proud or very proud to be an American. If you go back just to 2013, the same poll with the same methodology found 85% said they were proud or very proud to be Americans. You don't have to be perfectly proud. America's done a lot of bad stuff, but this is your country. And actually, America's pretty good. America's still pretty good. And I think it is fundamentally about the success of a march to the institutions. And I think the one that's been ignored the most, here we go. It's bouncing back a little bit here, which is interesting, right? And I don't think that's because of Joe Biden. I don't think that's the success of BLM bouncing back from the low of 2022. This is a deconstructivist ideology that as you've talked about long before me. But its roots have long been not in university, but in K through 12. K through 12 is the problem. That's the part that I think Jonathan Haidt pointed to with the coddling of the American mind. I experienced it firsthand and have moved my kid around schools because of it. It's what motivates virtually everything I do. Because
I'm flabbergasted by that. Like, this discussion is exasperating to me because I've had it for so I don't think people listening to this realize the profundity of what you have said. just drill down a little bit on that and explain how the K through 12 system, maybe we depart. By the way, I just want to say, going back to something else you said before you drill down on this, you know, when you said, I agree with 100% of the things you say, that makes for a less interesting conversation. Like,
well,
I'd love
I'm a Catholic,
to find
so I don't agree with 100%.
Right. Well, I'd love to find somebody who disagrees with policy, and I'm not a policy wonk, but just, again, that's the problem with having people who won't talk to you, who disagree with you about things. But what you said is incredibly profound. Explain the root of the problem as a K through 12.
Well, gosh, I could go on for 2 hours without stopping on this and only cover a portion of it. You have what you have, I think, fundamentally is a couple threads that overlap. So number one, I actually think that the system, the public school system as it is constituted and has been for a long time, stands on a bad foundation. It is at least partially, if not majority, inspired by this Prussian militaristic enterprise that Horace Mann and subsequent generations looked at with glee. Oh, instead of the kind of education that is now called a classical education, whereby like age 10, you can write in Greek and you've read all the great books. No, we need to focus on conformity, both in physical practice and in pedagogy, and segregation like a factory farm. Factory farms segregate by things like size, right? To fit into a factory, into a assembly line. All right, we need to make sure all the broiler chickens are the same size so they can fit on the hooks. So, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it means to have an education system that judges where you are on the basis of your birthday rather than your cognitive capabilities. And it basically ignores your cognitive capabilities and just says, when were you born? Okay, you're a first grader, you're a second grader. So that's like problem number one, is it actually is root and branch broken. But then what you have in the aftermath is right from the start, the departments of education in places like Johns Hopkins and Columbia and the really early founding institutions that teach the teachers was this corrupt proto-fascist ideology that then, you know, immediately was the best place to bring Frankfurt-style postmodernist deconstruct the West bullshit. So now, and for what, 60 years, if you go into education as your discipline because you love working with kids when you're in high school and you're a more social type of person and you think you want to be a teacher, you go into the worst brainwashing echo chamber ever constructed in all of human history. And even if you don't become like a lunatic, you have been swimming in toxic water the whole time. You're like a salmon raised in its own shit. You're toxic. And then you go off into school. And then what you encounter, if you've survived and still want to just do what's right for kids and get them to learn the 3 R's and, you know, you hit a bureaucracy that is controlled entirely by the most manifestly evil institutions in the history of America, the teachers' unions, that oppose anything like not just excellence, but change for any reason that doesn't line their pockets. You see the asshole teacher that sucks getting paid more than you, watching as students get socially promoted while failing to be able to read and write, like in almost all of the say schools in Chicago as an example. None of them can meet grade level in anything. And they're segregated by the zip code their parents can afford to live in, which is the most anti-civil rights construction in modern America. This is the most violently, this is the civil rights issue of our time, that our kids are segregated on that basis. Almost
no one talks about that. The paucity of resources given to children in schools with certain zip codes. Like,
I mean, I heard a story that this is going to blow hot steam out your ears. I don't want to get into too many details. It was told to me somewhat in confidence, but the general gist of it is this. There was a school system that was privately funded in multiple African countries that was kicking butt. It was inspired by a book called The Beautiful Tree by James Tooley, a guy that I know that is fantastic. Everyone, if you're watching this and you care about education, get The Beautiful Tree by James Tooley. These schools were performing like miracles. 5x improvements on all counts at a tenth of the price. The American teachers unions, seeing that this threatened this notion that what we need is more money, went out of their way to bring all of their international commie allies together to try to destroy this African private school system. These are evil people. These are villains. And they run the show in American K through 12. And even in places like Texas, here where I am sitting, where the teachers unions don't have the same control like they do in Illinois and the rest, they will fund anti-school choice Republicans so that they'll win. And like, God bless Governor Abbott for like coming at these people 1,000 miles an hour, pushing some of them out. We'll start to get some change to maybe finally happen here in this state. This is the battleground for the future. And if Doge shuts down and fires and then burns and salts the earth of the Department of Education, I almost don't care anything else that happens in this administration. It is total. It'll be the greatest presidency of my lifetime if that happens.
Yeah, when my dad was alive, when Trump was just getting sworn in, he hated Trump. And I said, what would it take to change your mind about Trump and to make you actually vote for him? He thought about it. This is more or less on his deathbed. And he said, if he could bring peace to the Middle East. And I thought that was like quite a statement. So, but by the way, we're in Texas, are you?
I'm in Austin.
Oh boy, I'm gonna be in Austin, I think in a week or 10 days. My schedule is insane, but I'd love to fit you in if you want to have a dinner. But my schedule is truly crazy.
Are you going? I'm going to ARC. I'll be back, and hopefully we'll overlap. We can get together.
No. Reed, pull. I'm not going to ARC this year. Reed, pull something up. LMAO. They'll find out soon enough. What is Chris Rufo doing in the education department? Rufo's been doing some great work. It'll be interesting to see. Yes. You know, when Carter put that in 79, Trump is doing his best to sunset it. Reading and scores have gone down. So here's my take. Like, if there was no institutional capture, no ideological capture of our institutions, I actually think we need a Department of Education. I actually think we need one. But we're fallible. We can't help ourselves. We have to put in nonsense and institutionalize it. Like, in an ideal world, it would be phonics. Like, you'd have evidence-based practice, but we can't do it. We've shown, particularly the Democrats, the left, the loony left has shown that they're utterly incapable of it. And so then you get the wrecking ball like Trump. We have to do away with it. We have no choice at this point because there are too many crazy people who are in the institutions.
Why do you think that the federal government either, I mean, there's, leaving aside that there's no reason to believe that the Constitution permits such a thing, but just philosophically, why do you think that the federal government of a country of 340 million people has any ability to do anything good for education at all? Why?
Well, what I said was, if it wasn't subject to ideological capture. So we know,
but even assume they're angels. Even assume they're angels. Why do you think that they can aggregate the knowledge in such a way that that would work? Because we have damaged, particularly children in low-income neighborhoods. And Rob Kramer and Lyle Asher have some great stuff on this. Lyle Asher is we did a series with him on this. He's a professor of English at Lewis and Clark in Oregon. The data on phonics is overwhelming. Like, it's just overwhelming. And kids, particularly in minority neighborhoods, are being taught by, again, I don't know any other way to say it, but crazy people, or people who are harboring under not. So the reason they're teaching whole language is basically an ideological consideration. So my claim to you is, what do you need this for? Well, we need rational standards. Like, we need a rational standard on evolution. We need a rational standards on certain, like, epistemological constructivism is an unmitigated catastrophe. And so we need okay, keep going. I want
to hear you. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, so the thing that the United States mostly, to some extent, accidentally found itself inventing or rooting in our structure is federalism. Right, that fundamentally we were these United States, and that we're actually a set of competing units of governance. And actually, the Constitution is quite explicit, and so is the Federalist Papers, that the entire premise was, this is why so much of what Trump's attacking is just illegitimate root and branch. the Constitution was meant to be fundamentally only what is in here is allowed. And if we missed anything, which we've missed a lot on purpose, all of it shall be left to the states and to the people, the 10th Amendment. It is meant to be a zero-based budgeting approach to institution building. We assume that the federal government has zero authority, and it is only granted that which we state explicitly. Now, why is that great? Why is that great for education? Why is that great for everything, including standards? And I put it in scare quotes for a reason. First of all, we will never agree, and there will never be one true authority, and I'm sure you agree with this, on what the standards actually should be. It is only through discourse that we have anything like temporary consensus on what the standard should be. As soon as you create permanent hierarchical authority, it will be captured by definition. This is public choice economics. This is the nature of politics. It's baked into the cake. So it can't be the case that you say there's one final authority on educational standards, but they won't instantly be A, wrong, because there probably isn't one standard that makes sense, and B, instantly captured because now you've created a bullseye that I can fairly affordably target and bend the standard towards my nonsense, and which is what's always happened every time.
You mean that it's subject to kind of political capriciousness or the votes, or
so there's a sort of old school Marxist writer named Gabriel Kolko. He wrote a book called The Triumph of Conservatism, and it actually talks about the regulatory state, and all the way back to the original Interstate Commerce Act of 1880 that was trying to regulate railroads. And what he points out is every time these power structures are instituted centrally, they are captured by the interests who will gain the most by capturing them. So the answer to this divide fundamentally, it's competition. It's let Texas and California compete over which standard and never unify it, ever.
But doesn't that assume that people, the whole basis of competition is that people have a choice. They can, like a lot of people who don't have the financial means, they can't just uproot from one state and go to another state.
But again, to come back to the beautiful tree, the beautiful tree is the ultimate refutation of this concern in this sense. What is this book? James Tooley was a Marxist working for Robert Mugabe. And what he came to discover in cataloging this book is he discovered that the poorest people on planet Earth right now are largely being taught by private teachers in small, inexpensive private schools. That they're often just like a good tutor who then starts to have multiple kids. And then the other families in the neighborhood hear about this because when they go to the free government school, the city bureaucrat that's sitting at the front of the classrooms doesn't think they're worth anything. It's just like, you're just go murder kids. I'm going to read the newspaper. I mean, these are the kinds of stories in here. He traveled the world and found this everywhere. So the notion that access and financial inequality, therefore government, is simply empirically false. These are the poorest people on planet Earth, and they're paying out of pocket. $2 a day families paying out of pocket to send their kids to a small private school and outperforming the free government school that's almost certainly spending literally 1,000-fold.
Yeah,
and that's because competition. They walk down the street and they see an ad for a school. They're competing all the time. The bad ones die. The good ones succeed until they get a little too big for their britches and start to die. It's just why freedom works. There is no binding constraint here.
I don't know if you're familiar with Katharine Birbalsingh from her school, Michaela.
She's great. I had her on the show. I love her. I love her to death.
She's amazing. I should have been more precise in my my question, but have you been to the school? I
was hoping to go while I'm in London next week.
Man, but it is awesome.
There's a documentary. There's a great documentary, The Strictest Headmistress, that really
and she's getting screwed with by politicians. I mean, she is unbelievable. I'm doing an event with her in April in New York And I think we don't know the venue yet, but Reed and Travis and I toured. Yeah, there she is. We toured Michaela. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Those kids, and 100% of those are minority, and I believe 50% of those are Muslims.
They're first generation immigrant families, some of whom are thinking, I guess I need to send my children back to my country of origin to get a decent education because my alternatives in London, which would be true in Chicago or New York or anywhere in California.
Crazy.
I mean, it's
crazy.
Her enemies are basically the most vile people you can possibly construct. If you had to like blank sheet of paper, what's the most vile person? Oh, someone trying to shut down a school that helps minority immigrant kids get into Oxford. Yeah, that sounds right. It's like
yeah,
it's like they're in child rapist or like right.
And we know from the data, we know from the outcomes assessment about Michaela's success. By the way, something is lingering in the back of my mind. You had said to me before, you're going to say something that's going to shock me or what have you. Every time I hear Mugabi, I don't know. Do you want me to tell you a truly horrific story?
Please lay it on me, man.
Every time I hear Mugabi, I met this guy actually through my dad, who, and again, this is what this guy told me. So he was found, they brought him up on some charge. It was a long time ago. I can't remember. And they made all of these people stand in a circle and they gave them each a sledgehammer. And they had to smash the person's head in front of them with the sledgehammer. And if you got the last person who got out lived, everybody else. So like they'd have a clock, guys would sit around there like a buzzer or something. I don't know if it's an actual clock, but they'd say go or whatever. And if you smash the person in the head with a sledgehammer early, they would shoot you. So once they said go or what have you. And so this guy, he survived. And they let him live. And every time I hear Mugabi, I think of that story. I mean, Mugabi is a lunatic on many. I'm not fond of using the word evil, but my goodness, and the stuff that he's done with the white farmers and this, I mean, he is, and the whole like torture things that he's had. But anyway, every time I think of Mugabi, it like just triggers that horrific memory.
Well, the thing,
and this guy was crazy, like all these scars over his face. Yeah, go ahead.
It's so. We hear among the like blob buzzwords that our kids get bombarded by is colonialization and decolonize, and this talk of the vile West. And I'm not going to say everything the West has done around the world throughout history is great, but the worst export from the West, from the salons of France by way of Germany, is Marxism. And Africa, because Mugabe's a Marxist, he's a Pol Pot character who also went to the salons of France to sip coffee and talk about philosophy and then go back and create killing fields in his country. This is the worst imperialist monster ideology to ever trot and Trotsky around the globe. And we're supposed to act. Well, first of all, our kids never learned this. Nobody knows that
nobody knows the killing fields. Nobody knows the killing fields.
Nobody knows that Africa is the most regulated socialistic continent on planet Earth. Nobody knows that, nobody knows anything. But I think we can safely blame our schools, which is supposed to be the institution that helps us know things.
But they know a lot about diversity. They know. Reed, pull up a statistic of. I read a shocking statistic of the percentage of U.S. high school students who do not know Canada is to the north and Mexico is to the south. So forget about World War II. Forget about Pol Pot killing people with glasses
that's right.
and watches. Forget about all that. Forget about Stalin. Forget about any of that stuff. Like I hear this, and this again. I would like to talk about the series we did with Lyle Asher about how colleges have gotten us into this mess and become cults is so crazy to me. So of course we need to undo. We need to dismantle or sunset the Department of Education. I mean, the whole thing is it's a massive. All right, here it is. According to the poll cited in the National Post, around 36% of high school students surveyed did not know that Canada is to the north as Mexico to the south, with the youngest cohort, 18 to 20, showing even a lower awareness of 12%. So think about that. 36% of high school students. So, I remember a conversation I had with my dad, and I told him I thought epistemology should be taught in schools and high schools. And he laughed at me, said, why don't we just teach him to read instead? Like, why? We can't even get him to read. What do you mean talking about teaching him epistemology?
The level of standards collapse is so much more profound than this. I saw one study review of presidential speeches that has found that over the past 100 years, the reading level of presidential speeches has declined precipitously, which is a kind of quasi-market signal for how much stupider on average the public has gotten. And I say that with no disdain for my fellow man here in America, but for the people who claim they care about having us be educated and steal our money to line their pockets to do it, and then spend a fraction of the money to do it.
Yeah, it's funny, the Flynn effect, IQ, he recently died, James Flynn, I think he's from Australia, that shows that people are they're getting more intelligent as time goes on. But maybe they're getting more intelligent, and there is a certain kind of ignorance bubble. But it also seems like our elites, there's kind of elite, not people talk about elite overproduction and the academies, but the people at the top of the game in the United States seem to have, they're more prodigious in their output. Like, and I know that I'm going to say this and I'm going to get 100 people saying, well, ISBN numbers, what does that mean? But just as one point of contact, my mentor published an insane amount of stuff with ISBN numbers, more than the entire country of Egypt published in a year. So there are, and of those, when you look at, I don't want to.
Are you talking about books when you say things with ISBN?
Yeah, and or even peer-reviewed articles is interesting if you look at. But there seems to be a small percentage of the people we have in this country. I don't know what that would be, 5-10%, who just globally outperform everybody except for the Chinese. The Chinese have this thing called the Gaokao. It's a test. I often thought of, if I ever wanted to try to destabilize the country of China, how I'd do it. But I don't want to say that on this because I don't need Chinese agents going after me. Oh, here it is, Ben Shapiro. Tomorrow on the Ben Shapiro, real Chris Rufo is on to drop a new exclusive bombshell clips and documents in the Department of Education. You won't see this anywhere else. Don't miss it. I'm sitting in a trove of insane videos, slides, and documents from the Department of Education. The whole department functions like a Ponzi scheme for left-wing ideologies, just waiting for the moment of maximum, what was that, Reed? Impact. Yeah. So we've known that this is, get back from this. We've known that this is true. We've known that it's the peer review process is corrupt. And I would argue that those are, in a sense, two branches on the same tree to a certain extent. But I would argue that the peer review process is closer to the trunk, because that's that's what we tried to do with the grievance study stuff, is delegitimize those canons of knowledge, because those inform public policies. But those are just far left ideological, I don't know, screeds might not be the right word, but in some cases it is.
Well, there's a couple things. There's some stories we have to unlearn. One of which is that anything like what we currently call school has had any material, provable connection or role in the development of the American middle class or progress. So, for example, both, certainly the left and some on the right. I know left-right is kind of stupid at this point. So I with that caveat. Have long been nostalgic for the halcyon equality and growth rates of the 1950s and 60s. When you go back to that time frame and prior, the percentage of Americans who were graduating from high school was under 30% of the population, and it had continued to grow. So as of 1950, it was under 30%. I might be getting that a tiny bit off. Maybe it was a little over 30, but it was around a third. That means it was lower in the prior period. The notion that formalized school, as we understand it, played any meaningful role in the development of this country is false. It's simply false. We were educated. we also need a really wide range of human beings in a country being contributors meaningfully in a diverse way. And instead, Frankfurt weirdos and whack jobs decided we need to push everybody through our indoctrination system so we can basically take over and destroy the country. They said these things. We have the receipts that they said these things, and they are doing them. And they told us these stories about how wonderful they are, about what a great guy Horace Mann was for instituting.
Yeah.
They're just false.
I actually read those accounts. Yeah.
So we have to just start by recognizing like these are simple facts. Our growth as a country economically has slowed as our credentialing and time spent in school has gone up. Nobody talks about this, but it is a fact. We are now the most schooled population, and we stagnate. And some of that's because of population decline, but even on a per capita basis, we are stagnating as we load up with credentials for things that can now basically all be done by ChatGPT's research.
Yeah. And the I don't know if it's the corollary to that, but something that's important to note is we are in desperate need of people who are trained and have vocational education, carpenters, plumbers, electricians. I told my daughter to be an electrician. She didn't take my advice. Those are noble, honorable fields. By the way, so you're in Austin. You know, the University of Austin has a fantastic speaker series that they've been putting on. I think it's going to rival Oxford debates. So if you're there, I'll be there. We really should get together on there. But I only mention that because I think you'd be a good guy to speak at that if we can find someone. So some of these things people will
I know those guys
on,
really well.
Other things.
Yeah, I'm happy to. That'd be
okay.
fun.
Okay. Cool.
I think that look, I've been thinking a lot about as a father with a son that's a freshman in school, in college, and a college experience that I've structured to be good for things besides the credential. He's in Rome. It's very inexpensive.
Excellent.
He's getting worldly. I don't care what he studies, frankly. But I've been thinking like we're looking out ahead, and there is definitely major disruption coming from,
of course,
AI, from large language models, these reasoning
100%.
models. I mean, you can now replace pretty high level research assistants with these reasoning models that do research and create these reports. So the question becomes like, what is it that you're supposed to do with yourself? What is it? And here's what I think, here's sort of the core of my whole reality in a lot of ways these days. If you go back to the history of school, but especially of the university, what is it? Well, the first university, I think, was set up in Bologna by the church. In fact, all of the universities in Europe were set up by the church, by the Catholic Church. Oxford was set up by the Catholic Church. Why? Because the development of moral discernment is probably the most important thing you can do. And even the whack job communists, they have a moral framework that they're applying. It's just evil. I think it's evil. They don't think it's evil. They think it's good. That's fine. That's the debate of our times. But I think that developing moral reasoning, having the kind of discernment that lets you know who you are and what is right and wrong for any given practical challenge you face as you go about your life. How should I handle this relationship when it's changing, or when I've fallen in love with someone else and I don't know how to talk to my current girlfriend, or whatever it is? Which job should I take? How should I deal with this opportunity to maybe get the upper hand in a negotiation, in a contract, because the other side missed some language? Should I let it slip through? Those are the things that, to me, having that be robust is what it means to be properly educated. Because we can get all the facts with ease. We can search for anything and get an answer. But the central human concern is, what does it mean to use our freedom towards the highest good?
Yeah.
And that's going to be different for everyone. But that, to me, that's what education is. That's the role of a father. and a mother. That's the role of parents. And we do that not by just by what we tell our kids, but by what we show them in our own actions and how we help them navigate this world. And I think the reason why Catholic schools, even though they're basically public schools with a theology class that just operate a lot cheaper, the reason why they still manage to outperform public schools, despite not being all that great, honestly, is because they're actually rooted in a basic idea, which is that we love the kids. And you can't turn that into a government bureaucracy. You can't have a government bureaucracy based on we love the kids. It's fundamentally incompatible, because love is a free choice, not a coerced, compulsed choice. And so if we want more love in our society, we need to be decentralized profoundly, so that our choices are free, and so that we can exercise this free will we have to choose towards the good, to know what that means, and to be in that battle of ideas at every step.
If you had a choice, would you rather choose that more people love each other in societies, or more people have more robust, rigorous epistemologies?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that I think that's it's a little bit of a false dichotomy. I don't see.
Okay, don't cheat the question. So let's say I gave you a magic wand.
I mean, but seriously, how is rigorous? Talk to me like I'm a Jersey guy that's not sure what you're asking.
Okay, would you rather have a society in which more people actually had the feeling of love for other people and for their fellow citizens and non-citizens, or more people had ways to think about problems that were clear, and they had more refined ways to make discerning judgments about issues, but less love?
I'll pick love over that, to be perfectly honest. But I think my definition of love, is a proper parental understanding of love, which is often quite tough and hard and painful, right? When you have a child that's suffering. Here's an example.
Okay.
My daughter comes to me. I don't have a daughter, but let's just imagine. My daughter comes to me and she's 8 and says she thinks she's a boy.
Okay.
My definition of love does not include saying, yes, I agree. And before you start puberty, if you keep saying this, I'm going to go along with you sterilizing yourself. That's not love. In fact, that's some combination of fear and selfishness on your part. And I say that with a certain amount of empathy for parents who feel trapped. Their kid. I met somebody recently who said their sister went to their parents and said, you either let me start to mangle my body or I'm going to kill myself. And that is terrifying. But it was not a loving act to let this underage person mutilate themselves. The loving act would be to put them in a mental institution and have them help work it out and keep them from killing themselves if they really were in that threat until they could overcome it. But love is a love. Love to me is you truly want the best for the other person. And you have some notion of that. And you're not, and that's not just because they're their hedonistic pleasure. That's not necessarily what's best for them. And as a parent, we understand this very intuitively, and then we should. And so that's kind of why I pick love every time on this, but love that understands that.
So let me ask you another question then, if I may. Excuse me. Would you rather have a society in which people were kind to each other or nice to each other? Because that seems to me to be the way that you frame love. Like when let me disambiguate those terms, because I think it's important. So when your daughter comes to you and she said, I think I'm a boy, to be nice to her I'm on my rendering of it would be like, oh, sweetheart, this is so hard. To be kind to her would be to tell her the truth.
Well, certainly kind. No question about it.
Yeah, there's no question.
It's never
about
loving. Lying is the root of everything must be truth. It's not loving to lie. It's not loving to deceive people. That if you're having to lie, it's the first indication that you're acting in your interest above the person you claim to care about. That's always true. It's all you think. I mean, maybe it's not always true. Those kinds of statements are hard, but because you can always create some philosophical trap. But if you're lying in a moment like that, then you are probably hiding for your own comfort from what is the loving choice, as I understand love as a parent.
And remember, just to take the 30,000-foot view on this, in that case and in those examples, it's not something so simple. It's that you have an array of forces aligned against you. You have the school system, the psychology. It's all been ideologically captured. The medical institutions from WPATH, the whole thing has been ideologically captured. So it's back to the previous question about epistemology. But let me ask a couple of other questions, because things I've been thinking about. I like to use these conversations to just bounce ideas of what I've been thinking about. So why do you think it is that some people have been completely immune to this nonsense for the last 10 years? And why is it that other people just succumbed hook, line, and sinker? Oh yeah, kids can be born in the wrong body. They need surgical interventions. And why is it that some people are like, that's insane. That's just completely ridiculous.
That's a good
It's
question.
not intelligence. It's not intelligence. I mean,
no, intelligence is actually probably goes the other way, actually.
100%. It's 100%. It makes it worse.
There's been some work on that front too. That high IQ, tends to correlate
the believing brain. Okay, but why is it that some people were just immune to it? I've been thinking about that a lot. Go ahead.
You won't like some of my answers, but that's okay. Well, maybe you will. I think Jesus? Number one is for sure, 100%. Probably the single biggest group that's been inoculated to this are truly religious people who believe in a human dignity that is derived from the transcendental, that's derived from being a creation.
But so many religions,
not entirely,
etc. They've been taken. Like, I just watched a video the other day. Read, see if you can pull it up, of a guy who is a pastor saying we shouldn't use the word savior. Like,
oh, sure. I mean, look at the Episcopal Church. There's a crazy woke stuff.
Yeah, the Episcopal Church. Yeah, but I wouldn't mention the Episcopal Church, because they're not rah-rah fundamentalist hardcore. Like, I was thinking about, it's not a prophylactic against, is it this guy? Yeah, you can't use the word savior there. So, I mean,
so this is like liberation theology, woke brain
of the 90s
rot
in South America. So less liberation theology and more that they're like the atheist movement succumbed to a religion within the atheist movement. This is a religion that's succumbed to a religion within a religion. It's been parasitized. So I'm not buying the whole Jesus thing.
No, even so, I'm just saying, like, there's a bunch of people who've been who've had an effective inoculation to psychopathy, social psychopathy. I think a lot of people of faith have. That's been their source. There's a lot of people who are like, that's just evil, and they didn't have some philosophical framework or some deontological moral construction. They just were like, no, that's evil. That's against my understanding of like why, like, your body is sacred. What are you doing? This is evil. I'm out. There are people like yourself, and I'm a mix of some of these, who, just have an understanding of the nature of reality that's quite rigorous, and are temperamentally more inclined to be like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, and I don't care if you don't like me. Like, I don't get my
temperamentally. Interesting.
I mean, 100. I mean, I'm like a born in South Philly. My I'm like a Jersey guy. So to some level, if you don't like me, I don't care. Like, my self-worth has nothing to do with whether you like me.
Yeah, that's God. I wish I could teach young people that. That's a great attitude. You know who succumbed to this the most? Well, no, I agree. I agree at the core. It just has to be the correct core. But you know who succumb to this ideology the most? Reed, see if you can pull up the bus meme, one bus smashing the other with atheists and pregnant men. Atheists succumb to those. The atheists had it the worst of all. They had the affliction, the mind virus worse than anybody. Well, those people went completely crazy land.
We talked about this when I had you on my show. I think
right.
I think that look, I don't expect to convert you into a papist. But I think
that would be impressive.
It'd be amazing. If I do, I will. It'll be like
you're guaranteed to go to heaven.
Yeah, St. Paul will give me the most epic high five. No, this meme, I love this meme.
Yeah, blow it up, Reed, because I can't see that. So, the less religion there is in the world, the more rational and intelligent people become. It is good religion is declining. And then pregnant man comes and that's the atheist movement, or the atheists.
Well, so here's the thing. I've gone on my own journey with this. During the time when I was trying to teach myself economics on the bus into New York City from Jersey every day, I also watched a 20-hour symposium called Beyond Belief, which was at the peak of the new age. Everybody was there talking, And then I read a series of books on intelligent design. And back and forth. I think that fundamentally you cannot. I actually helped. I've come to understand this partly from the conversation we had a year ago. If you're a materialist alien that comes to planet Earth and you are just the product of the version of the game of life that through emergent simple rules gives rise to consciousness somehow we don't understand and leaps from thing to thought somehow that we don't understand. But sometimes let's imagine that's true. And you're just observing the material nature of the human animal. You will not get individual rights or liberty or equality as the good. You won't. It's might makes right. You'll say, oh, this is an interesting groupish species that seems to do well in groups, and the strong groups dominate the weak ones, and they survive by that domination. Okay. You actually arrive at woke ethics simply by observing the nature of the human animal objectively. So if you want to be rational and be like a scientist, that's to me what a scientific look as a kind of impartial observer looking at the human animal would derive human. I don't know you'd even call it ethics, but just what is human nature? What are we? So I think the notion of equality as we understand it in the West is fundamentally a metaphysical assertion. That's what it is. It's not utilitarian ethics. That leads to communism if it's not bounded by virtues. It's the greatest good for the greatest many. Okay, Peter Singer. So we can sometimes kill babies that are already born, or it's better to kill a whale because more people can eat the whale. You're off in commie land real fast with unbound utilitarian math.
Okay, Reed, pull up the final scene in the old Star Trek Mirror Mirror. It's when they're in the transporter room. You ever watch Star Trek?
Oh yeah, of course.
Good. You're not dead to me. That's good. Reed's gonna.
I was just talking about Captain Kirk earlier this morning. Actually,
one of the greatest men who's ever lived. It was irrational.
It was irrational to save Spock, not the many, the one. Kirk was not a utilitarian. It was explicit.
Yeah. So this is when, let me just set this up for you, and I hope this responds to you. This is Mirror Mirror. A lot of subsequent Star Trek fans. Yeah, this is great. So they go into this evil universe. So that guy there, the Spock is the evil Spock who's working.
You can tell from the goatee.
Yes, exactly. Horrifically bad Federation. That is James. That's the good James T. Kirk. So the good through the transporter malfunction, the good Kirk finds himself in the Mirror Mirror universe, and this is a famous scene. And this is, I hope, John, and you let me know, does this respond to you? Go ahead, Reed.
By that time, I have something to say. How long before the Hulk prediction of collective revolt is realized?
Approximately 240 years.
The inevitable outcome?
The Empire shall be overthrown, of course.
The illogic of waste, Mr. Spark. The waste of lives, potential, resources, time. I submit to you that your empire is illogical because it cannot endure. I submit that you are illogical to be a willing part of it.
You have 1 minute and 23 seconds.
If change is inevitable, predictable, beneficial, doesn't logic demand that you be a part of it?
One man cannot summon the future.
But one man can change the present. Be the captain of this enterprise, Mr. Spark. Find a logical reason for sparing the Hulkins and make it stick. Push till it gives. You can defend yourself better than any man.
Pause it, Reed.
Captain, get in the chamber.
So does that answer your objection for no metaphysics needed?
What? Because I mean, short, like quick answer without really trying to process this fully would be no. But
you're dead to me.
because Captain Kirk said you should. No, here's what I heard there, and maybe it's a mishearing. David Hume has a quote. It's to the effect of reason will be a slave. It's like reason is a slave of the passions, and it ought to be. It shall not assume any other station. Yeah, something like that. That's what I'm hearing Captain Kirk say. I'm hearing Captain Kirk say something like, use your logic to justify, much like Jonathan Haidt's Elephant and Rider, to justify the moral world that animates your vision of the future. That's what I heard there. Do you think that's a bad hearing of
yeah,
Kirk's
no. I think that's a reasonable interpretation. You know, without having watched the whole episode, I should just do that, Reed. We should just watch Star Trek episodes, and I should comment on that. That would make me very happy.
We should make that. We should just make that. You can count me in to be like a permanent guest on a weekly basis if that's the new format to the show, Peter.
I would love that. I did this thing on Clubhouse where I would talk about science fiction, but which I know way too much about, I'm embarrassed to say. So it's like that you would need that you could use reason, because you said the Federation will die, and Kirk was telling him, like, find a reason. It's irrational and illogical. Spock is predicated on logic. But bracketing all that and throwing that out the window. Have you seen Severance?
Yeah. I'm slow to get through season 2, but I really enjoyed season 1.
It is. Reed and I have been watching it. I watched season 1 alone. Season 2. I mean, the last episode that we saw is one of the greatest.
Oh, I can't wait! I can't wait.
It's fantastic. Yeah. Apple has been knocking it out of the park with some great movies. But okay, so we're pretty much at time. I wanted to ask you about other things, but we've got to go. I've got meetings and such. But John, where can people find our episode? Where can people find you? Tell us.
Most of the time you'll find me on YouTube at Dad Saves America. This is our show, which is not just a podcast. I also do commentaries and occasional documentaries. And if you find me there on Twitter, it's just my name at John Papola, where I'm spicier than I am on YouTube because the text format gives rise to the worst angels of my nature.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And last time I saw you was it? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that a less frequent place to go is YouTube/Radical Discourse, where my rap battles, Keynes versus Hayek, and now actually Brian Kaplan versus there we go. The Battle of the Borders is the latest one. So you want to talk about discourse and steel manning arguments and bringing them to life in powerful ways. It's something that I really believe in, even as a very opinionated guy that is perfectly comfortable saying evil.
Yeah. I watched those. Those were so clever.
I appreciate
they're so clever.
Well, I think you need to understand all sides. You need to. It's an incredible gift that we're capable of that, and to not use it is to not use your full humanity.
Cool. All right, man. Keep your tab open, and thanks for everybody for listening. We appreciate it. We appreciate the comments. I hope to see you in Austin. My schedule is totally crazy, and then I'm off to Eastern Europe right after that. So thanks, John. You're doing great work. I love to having you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be back and see you again, and hopefully I'll see you in person real soon.
Cool. Look forward to it. Thanks, man. Thanks, Reed.